Hi there! Like 16.5 million others, I recently came across this video by Mark Rober in my recommendations. He made a robot that plays the well-known game Rock, Paper, Scissors, and Mark claims it's unbeatable.
This is a friendly robot that's impossible to beat a rock, paper, scissors.
The first person to beat the robot will win $10,000.
First person to beat him fair and square gets the $10,000 cash briefcase.
My name is Helen and I work on developing all sorts of gadgets. Today I'm going to tell you how you can beat this robot. Make sure to leave a comment if someone manages to win the prize thanks to this video. So, even though an entire ocean separates me from Mark and I'm on the other side of the world, here in Europe this game is just as well known from childhood. I believe the rules of this game are likely familiar to you as well, even though it may have a different name. And if so, then you're probably wondering how it's even possible to always win at this game. I bet many of you tried to cheat at it as a kid, and now it's not that easy. So, how does the robot manage to do it? Well, let's dive in and figure it out. The robot itself is basically a plywood box with an arm at the end of a lever. It's like a one-armed bandit from a Vegas casino, but you know, the budget version. So the hand parts were made using a 3D printer. I've gone through hundreds of projects online, dozens of 3D models on Thingiverse, and I can confidently say that this hand was designed specifically for Mark Rober. I couldn't find a similar design anywhere, and it's quite interesting because the answer lies partly within it. Notice that the motors are located in the hand. Doesn't that surprise you? Probably not, since you're not a robotics engineer, but for me this design is a bit unusual. The thing is, our hand is like a lever, and as we know from high school physics lessons, the longer the lever, the easier it is to lift a weight. In the case of our hand, the weight is whatever we're lifting. Therefore, the longer your arm, the harder it becomes to lift something. This explains why successful powerlifters typically have shorter limbs compared to basketball players, for example. What's my point? Oh yeah. So, when you're designing a rope, you'll try to position the motors not at the end of the arm, but as close to the elbow as possible. This way, your robot won't waste energy lifting extra weight every time it raises its arm, and it will increase its lifting capacity. Motors are rarely placed in the palm itself. Usually these are prototypes or show models, not robots designed for real-world use. And this wasn't designed by engineers, but by evolution. Our hands are structured in exactly the same way. Most of the muscles that control finger movements are not located in the palm itself, but in the hand. These muscles are connected to the fingers by long tendons that pass through the wrist and attach to the bones of the fingers. When the muscles contract, they pull on the tendons, causing the fingers to flex or extend. The second reason why you wouldn't place the motors in the palm and would move them to the hands is the gripping force. The stronger the motors, the bigger and heavier they are. If you're building a robot and want it to be able to hold something heavier than a spoon, you need powerful motors. And powerful motors mean large motors. The palm is too small for this, and such a design wouldn't provide a strong handshake. But in the hand, there's plenty of room for powerful motors. So why did Mark place the motors here? The thing is, his robot doesn't perform any useful work. The strength of the handshake doesn't matter. It won't be grabbing or holding heavy objects. The robot task is simply to move the fingers. The speed at which the hand moves up and down doesn't affect the game outcome either. So there's no point in moving the motors to the elbow to speed up that motion. What really matters is how quickly your robot can move its fingers. And here, this motor placement works in our favor. See these transparent silicone cords? They're responsible for flexing and extending the fingers. When the motor turns in one direction, the fingers close. When it turns in the other direction, they open. The shorter the length of these cords, the less energy is lost, and the fingers move faster. When the motors are placed far away and the cords transmitting movement to the fingers are long, the speed will be lower. This happens due to the elasticity effect. That's why this design is optimal for the tasks this robot performs. Okay, having the fastest fingers in the West is cool, but it's not what's going to help us win 100% of the time. So how does the robot manage to do it? Let's take a look at how it's built. We're lucky that the video showed us what's inside the robot, so we can figure out how it works. Although Mark did hide a few things from us. So watch the video till the end and I'll reveal all the secrets. Now it's hard to see clearly, but I was able to identify the main components. This box is actually a driver from a Chinese company called Stepper Online. Specifically, it's the CL86T model. This company manufactures stepper motors and the drivers needed to control them. I know this because I've used the motors in my own project several times. In the robot's palm, there are servo motors, and this driver isn't for them. Since there are no other options, this driver is responsible for raising and lowering the arm. The motor itself looks something like this. Here you can see which ports Mark has connected to the driver. These are the first, third and fourth blocks. By downloading the driver's datasheet, I can figure out what each of these ports is connected to and what they actually do. The first module is the control interface. Here we tell the driver what to do. The second block is for additional interfaces, like alarms or error outputs. As far as I can tell, it's empty. Well, no big deal. Who cares about driver errors anyway? The fourth block is for input power and signals to control the stepper motor. But the most interesting part is the third block. Here there are ports for connecting the encoder, and they are being used. An encoder is a device that allows you to track the motor's position. For example, my 3D printer doesn't know where its print head is located. In the starting position, it has these buttons, which are also called limit switches. The printer moves the head until all the buttons are pressed. This way, it knows it's in the starting position and can begin printing. Unlike us, the robot can't see or feel what's happening with its arm. So, to know whether the arm is raised or lowered, it would typically use limit sensors. But this robot doesn't have them, and if we put it simply, they are already built into the motor. This device that tracks movements is called an encoder. Thanks to the encoder, the robot knows that the arm has made 3 swings, and at the top position it throws the fingers. But this only helps it play, not win. So let's keep looking. Above the driver, we have a few more interesting components. This is the robot's brain, the Adafruit M4 board, and it's here for a reason. This board has a Cortex M4 processor running at 120 MHz. It can perform complex tasks faster and more efficiently compared to popular alternatives like Arduino. But personally, I would have gone with the ESP32. It runs at 240 MHz, which is twice as fast as 120 MHz. And unlike the Adafruit, it has Wi-Fi built in. This allows you to control and flash the robot directly from your smartphone. So Mark, if you ever need any more robots, give me a call, you know how to find me. Wink wink! Above the control board, there's a 16-channel controller with a PWM and an I2C interface. Yes, that sounds complicated, but all you need to know is that this thing controls the motors in the hand. And this component at the very top is a step-down module. It takes a higher input voltage, like 12 volts, and it steps it down to 5 volts. This is needed to power components that require different voltages. Alright, Sherlock, all of this is interesting, but how does the robot manage to win? Good question! I think it's all about the infrared sensor that reads the hand movements and just in a fraction of a second throws the winning gesture. Technically, we could have started with this, but I had to walk you through how it works first. But what if I told you that this robot has already been beaten? And guess who did it? Mark Rober himself in his own video. Look closely. In slow motion you can see that after Mark throws paper, the robot also throws paper, but then it quickly switches to scissors. So the robot is cheating. Mark actually beat the robot in his own video and caught it on camera. Hey Mark, your $10,000 are waiting for you. Feel free to take them. But okay, in reality they both threw paper, so Mark hasn't won yet. But seriously, the robot inexplicably shows paper first and only then switches to the right combination. This is already getting us closer to the answer to how the invincible robot works. In fact, it's cheating. But let's go step by step. This is a Leap motion controller, specifically the second version made by Ultraleap. It allows a computer to recognize your hand movements. It's often used for tasks like interacting with a computer or in VR headsets to track hand gestures. This little device is what figures out which gesture you're shown, and only then does the robot make its move. In other words, the winning strategy boils down to watching what you show and then instantly throwing the winning gesture. If a person tried this, you'd catch the cheater right away. But the robot does it in a fraction of a second, so you don't even notice it. By the way, you can't connect a Leap motion controller to the Adafruit M4 board. It requires significantly more computing power for its calculations, so there must be an additional computer inside the robot capable of handling complex computations that wasn't shown to us. Alright, so all we need to do to win is to trick the infrared sensors. And I'm about to tell you how to do it. To understand how to trick it, we first need to figure out how the Leap motion controller works. It has 4 infrared LEDs. The human eye can see infrared light, so it seems like nothing is happening. But this spectrum is visible to a camera. If we look closely at video, we can notice these LEDs emitting light. Why do they do that? It's because the device also has 2 cameras that work exclusively in the infrared spectrum. These cameras capture the hands illuminated by infrared light and send the images to a computer. The computer then processes this information to recognize the hands and the gestures you're showing. You might wonder, why make it so complicated? Why not just use regular cameras? We already have computer vision technology and we can recognize video data. Even self-driving cars use cameras to navigate. There are a few reasons for this. Regular cameras work with visible light. This means the image changes based on the room's lighting. You could easily beat the robot just by turning off the lights. Infrared cameras, on the other hand, only see what's illuminated by their infrared LEDs. This ensures not only consistent lighting for the hands, but also eliminates unnecessary data. Okay, so what can we do with this sensor? Well, we just need to confuse it. Here are 5 ways to do that. The first and most obvious idea is to use fast movements. However, the sensor operates at up to 200 frames per second. Even if you could react faster than that, it wouldn't work. The robot waits for your gesture and then shows its winning move. You might think about making misleading hand movements, but it seems like this possibility was anticipated. Remember that slow motion clip? When the robot initially throws paper, Mark's hand is still clenched into a fist. The robot probably assumed it was a rock. Then Mark reveals paper and the robot quickly switches to scissors. It looks like this feature is specifically designed to prevent clever tricksters like us from confusing the robot with fake moves and claiming victory. But don't worry, I've got 4 more tricks up my sleeve. The second trick to confuse the sensor is to flood it with false signals. Any reflected infrared light is interpreted by sensor as a signal to process. The dim infrared light from the LEDs is designed to illuminate just your hands, making them easy to recognize against a dark background. But if you use an infrared lamp to light up the entire area, the cameras could get overwhelmed by a flood of signals, potentially throwing them off. That said, it might not work. A lot depends on factors like your room's layout, ceiling height, lamp power, and how the Leap motion developers program the device to filter out noise. The third method is quite interesting. All you need to do is cool your hands. At around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, the skin starts to lose moisture, which can make reflecting infrared light more difficult. However, this probably won't stop the sensor from seeing your hands and identifying the gesture you're making. At 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the chances of the device struggling increase significantly. And below 23 degrees, the skin becomes truly frozen, and the lip motion might no longer be able to accurately recognize movements. This happens because frozen skin is much less effective at reflecting infrared light. But here's the catch: at those temperatures, water freezes, and I'm not sure your hands would still function well enough to make gestures. For those who don't want to dunk their hands in liquid nitrogen, don't worry, there are simpler and more reliable methods. The fourth method relies on the reflective properties of materials. Lip motion sensors are trained to recognize hands based on the typical reflectivity of human skin. But if we increase the reflective properties of our palms, the sensor is likely to struggle. You could paint your hands gold or silver. Not only would you look like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, but you'd also increase the amount of scattered light. The most reliable option, however, would be to wrap your hands in foil or wear firefighter gloves like this. Foil doesn't just reflect light. Its uneven surface scatters the rays in various directions, making it incredibly difficult for the sensor to interpret your gestures. Looks like I found another use for the Infinity Gauntlet. And finally, the fifth method. It also works by reflecting light, or rather, by not reflecting it. Until now, we've been trying to reflect as much light as possible to confuse the sensor. This time, we'll try to absorb all the light so that lip motion doesn't see anything at all. But how can we absorb infrared light? Actually, just like with the visible spectrum. You should remember from school that white reflects more light than black. Also, a perfectly polished glossy surface reflects much more light, while a matte surface reflects almost no glare. So you can paint your hands with black matte paint. But the easiest way would be to wear simple black winter gloves. And the more fuzzy they are, the better. Such fluffy gloves will absorb much more light than regular ones. For a 100% option, you can paint your gloves with the darkest paint in the world. This is Wanta Black, developed by the British company Surrey Nanosystems. It absorbs 99.965% of light due to its unique nanotube structure. Because of this, objects painted with this paint look like a hole in space. I think a black hole should look something like that, since they absorb 100% of light. However, Wanta Black is not so easy to buy, but I found an alternative that anyone can purchase. This paint is called Black 3.0 and is available on the official website for $45 per bottle. So, with these simple methods, you can beat this invincible robot Rocky. Be sure to let me know if you managed to fool him. I'd love to hear if any of these methods work for you, or if you came up with something even better. Thanks for watching! Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it. Bye!